Hello everybody, I'm so excited that you're here. My name is Carly, I make sewing content on YouTube, and today I'm going to be showing you how I made this here dress. Really hope you enjoy this tutorial, and if you do, please be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you like more creative content. Let's get into the video. Yesterday I got invited to an opening night of a show, and it is tonight, and being the person that I am, I want to make something new for it. So today we are doing a 1-day challenge. I'm going to be making one of my new designs, which is lovingly called the Jo March dress. I will show you a picture of it here. I am going to be patchworking my own material, and I'm going to do that off camera. If you want some more resources on patchworking, you can watch some of my old patchworking videos. But basically I'm going to make my textile off camera, bring it back and show you how to make the Jo March dress. And hopefully we can get this done before the show tonight. We love a deadline to get something done. If you're patchworking your own material, you will need to patchwork until you have about 5 meters of fabric. I know that's a lot, but it'll be worth it. I hope. If you're buying your fabric from the store, about 5 meters should be good. I haven't measured it before, but I hypothesize that it will be just about perfect. If you want to add a petticoat, you'll also need a lining material or a lightweight cotton to go underneath, and probably about 2 to 3 meters of that. And I have been doing a little tulle round around the bottom, and for that you need 4 meters of tulle at least. I know that this all sounds a lot, but really it's optional. You can make your skirt as gathered or as not gathered as you like. So the roundup is 5 meters of your main fabric, 4 meters of tulle, and I think you can get by on 2 meters of, 2 meters of your lining fabric. But I always opt for more volume than less. I'm gonna patchwork. I'll see you when I have my textile completed to construct the dress. Okay, for you it's been 1 second, and for me it's been about 3.5 hours, and I've been Project Runway style patchworking. I have been patchworking faster than I ever have in my life. I've constructed all of the fabric that I needed so we can get into making the bodice. Also, please don't mind how I look. I'm fully in the thick of it at this stage. Let's jump into the pattern pieces. The top is constructed with 2 pattern pieces, and they're both on the fold. I drafted mine on a dress form like this, but you can hack these from a pattern that fits you pretty well, a bodice block pattern. When looking for a bodice block pattern, we want something that has a little bit of ease but not too much. So I would recommend like a smock style dress, or if you're a little bit more advanced, you can use a bodice block that fits you and then just widen it a little bit so that it has ease. This is what the front pattern piece looks like. It's on the fold. It's got a square neckline, and it's about 6 inches from the top of this neckline to where we attach the skirt. And this is the back pattern piece. It's about 2 inches here, and we have a nice big low scoop back. If you're hacking this shape from a bodice block, you can just cut that square neckline into the neck, and then just make sure that it lines up with the back seam of the back. And you can do a big U shape for the back. Really, it's just about trial and error. That's what I did. But yeah, those are the shapes that I'm using. Hopefully it helps a little bit. Good luck. If you're drafting this pattern yourself, I'm wishing you lots of luck, and you can always just send me a DM on Instagram or a comment on YouTube, and I will try and respond and give you as much information as I can. When cutting out fabric on the fold, I enjoy ironing my fabric so that the fold is very crisp and clear, and I know that I'm getting it precisely in the center. I cut out my front and back bodice pieces on the fold out of the lining fabric, and then also out of my new fabrication, which was this beautiful blue patchwork fabric. Once I had my patchwork fabric all cut out, I placed the front and the back panels together, and I sewed them together along that shoulder seam, and I repeated this process for the lining as well. Also, if you're working with a patchwork textile like me and you cut out your pattern from this patchwork, some of your seams may be vulnerable to pulling apart because they've lost where you backstitched them originally. So I would highly recommend just taking a moment to go over and look at the seams and just see if any of them kind of want to pull apart. And I did that just then, and I just backstitch at the top and the bottom of the seam just so that it has some more structural integrity, because it is so frustrating to fully line a piece and then look at it and you realize that, you know, here it's like pulled apart a little bit, and there's not a great deal you can do to fix it after the fact. So yeah, just go up and clean up those back stitches for extra strength. For this dress, we're going to encase all of our seams inside the lining of the bodice, which is awesome. To begin, I just press out those shoulder seams to make them at the least amount of bulk as possible. And then I put the lining right sides together on top of the main fabric. Then I pin all the way around the neckline and the back of the dress. And we're just going to sew in this big loop all the way around. Once you're done sewing all the way around the neckline, I think it's very helpful to clip your seams where there is extra bulk, and especially in the corners of that square neckline. It just helps this next process where you are flipping it right sides out and ironing down that seam and just trying to get everything to lay as neat and flat and crisp as possible. Also, I forgot to say, in my original design, I actually put pleats in before I did any construction. There are 2 tiny pleats on each side of the bust. It's, for me, about a size 8 Australian, and I had the bust pleat about 4 inches from the center fold, and 2 tiny ones, as small as you can really make them. For this guy, I want to construct it first, and maybe I will add pleats in later to the lining and to the front pieces. I just wasn't sure if it's going to work with the sequin, so I'm going to do it later. But yes, just so you know, my original design was pleats first, then construct. I told you we were going to encase all of our raw edges in this top, and to do that, we just have to use the burrito method. And if you haven't used the burrito method before, you're basically just trying to tuck in all of the fabric of your top, and that's in between the main and the lining fabric of one of your shoulder seams. I know that verbally that might not really make a lot of sense, but I've tried to include some good clips here to show you. Just make sure that you keep the side seam not sewn. We'll do that later. We're just focusing on that armhole sleeve section. Once you sew that seam, you can either clip it, or I'm just going to trim my seam allowance down to probably 1/8 of an inch, and then we're going to flip it right sides out. It's really fun. So it's like this, and then you just pull that strap out gently. And now one side of your bodice is going to be basically fully enclosed. The burrito method changes lives, man. It really does. That is straight facts. Here I am just pulling out the shoulder seams, so everything is all finished. All we need to do now is finishing the side seams. And to do that, you kind of just lay your fabric out so that you've got your main and your lining, and the lining touches lining and the main touches the main. And I don't know if that makes sense once again, but I think that when you're practically doing it, it will. I believe that for you. Anyway, you sew that down, and basically that finishes all of your seams for you, and the bodice should be complete. Set up into the year 3000. Don't mind the look, but that's the bodice done. Pretty simple, pretty cute, pretty easy. And the back. Doing the Wonder Woman pose for good vibes. Also, once I finish the bodice, I like to add a round of top stitching right along the neck and the arms. And I also like to do 1 round of stitching along the bottom just to secure the lining to the main fabric. and that makes it easier to put the skirt on, in my opinion. Also, I think I've decided I do want the bust darts, so I'm going to add them in right here, and then we'll move on. Also, there are two things at play right now. One is that I'm showing you how I made this dress, and two is that I need to be at this event at like 6:30, and it's like 2:30 now. So if you're interested in that part of this, it's 2:30. We're in the race. Actually, I just checked and it's 2:40, so my plan was bodice 2 to 3, skirt 3 to 4, petticoat if I want 4 to 5. 5 to 6, get ready. 6 to 6:30 drive. We've got no room for error.
I just quickly put those bust darts in. They're 2 1cm darts, about 4 inches from the center of the bodice, and they are super tiny and cute.
Okay, we're up to the skirt portion of the video. I have cut out my patchwork skirts already, as well as a lining piece for them, because my patchwork has no seam finishing. So, the dimensions for the skirt are 2 meters long and 1 meter wide, and we need 2 of these each. You can make this slightly less gathered, you can make it slightly more gathered, but this is a really good medium point. But I really like this 4 meter circumference. It's just the perfect amount of dramatic. What I'm going to do is pin down my main fabric to the lining fabric, overlock it along all 4 edges, and then I can start treating the lining and the main fabric as one piece of fabric. If you haven't patchworked, you don't need to do this, you can just go straight to construction. Skirt pieces are done, and it's 3:04, so we are on budget for time. We're on time budget. Now we're gonna add pockets. This part is optional as well. I just think if you're gonna have a dress that has a little bit of weight to it, you may as well add pockets because it should support them pretty well. And they're pretty easy. Let me show you how to do them. This is what the rough pocket shape looks like. I think there are free pocket patterns on the internet, but I just use my hand to make sure that it's going to fit, and then you just need a straight side seam. And basically what you're going to do is that on each side of the skirt panel, you're going to pin down your pocket, right sides together, and sew it down. For this dress, my pockets are 7 inches below the top of the skirt, and you can adjust that depending on where you like your pockets to sit. This is the side seam of the skirt also. Right side together, 7 inches. Hang on. 7 inches. Pin it down.
So you will pin down your 4 pockets on each side of the skirts, the front and the back, and then you're just going to stitch it down. I like to flip my pocket out then and top stitch it so that it's all like nice and laying crisp and neat and whatever. It is to be noted that I do enjoy overlocking the side of my skirt first and overlocking the raw edges of my pocket so that when I attach my pocket, all raw edges have been covered and they are basically good to go. If you don't have an overlocker, I do recommend zigzag stitching them or doing a French seam, which is much more difficult but very possible. Then I pin the side seams of my skirts together and I sew all the way down around the pocket and to the bottom of the skirt on either side of the skirt, and then your skirt's done and it has pockets. Yeah. Then it's time to start gathering the skirt. I just put my stitch length up to the longest stitch length and ran 2 parallel lines along the top edge of the skirt, and then it was ready to be gathered.
The skirt has its gathering stitches in, it's got its pockets in, and now it's time to gather it. If you haven't done a gathered skirt before, you're just going to pull on the 2 parallel stitches that we stitched in, and that automatically gathers the fabric. It's been a while since I've made a video and I've really missed it. I have been working on a new website, which is been taking up some time, and I kind of just told myself that I couldn't make a YouTube video until I finished my website, which is kind of silly, but that's why I haven't made any videos. But in the meantime, since the last video I made, I have made a Patreon, and I wanted to take this time firstly to say hello to my patrons and also just to give them a massive shout out. Every month I am releasing one 45-minute long craft club, and that's more of a long form chat and craft kind of thing, with some little group assignments, if you could call it that, just like little projects that we can work on throughout the month. Every now and then, and sometimes it will just be crafting on our own things. The second reward that I'm really excited about is a detailed pattern and sewing breakdown, and that will just be a spotlight on one garment every month, and I'm just doing my most requested garments at this stage. I'm not qualified to make a really good PDF pattern, but what it is a very detailed breakdown of all of the sewing steps, the way I drafted the pattern, measurements, fabric choice, literally every single piece of information that I can give to you is going to be in that PDF. So hopefully you can recreate the garment that you want to. That's enough about my Patreon. I just wanted to say that it is there. If you're interested in more content from me, you know where to find it. And to my patrons watching this, you are the real ones. You're the real ones for joining in month 1. I love you guys. Thank you.
To attach the skirt to the bodice, I aligned the side seams of the skirt to the side seams of the bodice, and I pinned that down, as well as pinning the rest of the skirt down evenly, dispersing those gathers. And then I stitch at a regular stitch length in between the two gathering stitches so that it's easy to remove those stitches later on.
Hot take. I love taking out basting stitches, which by the way is the next step. Also, basting stitch, by the way, if you didn't know, is like that long stitch length, the gathering stitch. You can use it to like baste your pieces together in a way that isn't permanent necessarily. Anyway, I'm gonna do this and then we can just try it on and see how it's going. Okay, you're pushed up as far as you can go to one side of my room. Can you see it? It's great. I'm so happy. It's come along. Yes. Now I'm just deciding hem length and whether I want to add a petticoat underneath. Less so for volume and more so just to have some tulle that just hangs a few inches below the hem of this. Because I think that's really exciting. So I'm making the decisions now. But basically, if you're following along with me, we're done. You can hem your dress and you are done. And if you want to add a petticoat, maybe I will. And if I do, I'll show you how.
To hem the skirt, I folded it up 1.5 inches, and then I folded it up 1.5 inches again. I gave it a great press and I pinned it down. I feel like all of these steps just help it to be really even and crisp, and I do not miss a good press of the hem. Oh boy, it makes everything look so much better.
The petticoat that I do for this dress is basically just a smaller skirt, as in less gathered, that sits at the waistline underneath the main fabric, and right at the bottom of this extra second skirt I just have a little round of gathered tulle, and that sticks out underneath the bottom of the hem of the dress, and it just gives it a little bit of volume, but mainly it's just there for cuteness. My skirt panel for the petticoat is 120 centimeters long and about 80 centimeters long as well. The waist is 120. The length that goes down the side of the skirt is 80. It should be slightly shorter than your main dress. I recommend drawing a line on the petticoat where you want to sew your tulle so that it doesn't go all wonky. Luckily, I ran out of fabric, so I had to seam together some pieces of fabric to make this. So I have a lovely straight seam to guide me for my tulle. And that is my plan. So now I have my skirt pieces. I'm going to construct it like a regular skirt, sew down the side seams, hem it, and gather at the waist. And to finish off, I will add my round of gathered tulle. I hope this is making sense. Okay, I've just returned from my frantic session cutting the 4 meters of tulle. I folded it in half and I cut it in half again, so I have 8 meters now to sew in a big loop. The tulle that I've got, 17 inches by 4 meters, and I've got 4 strips of them. I'm going to sew them all together into a big loop, gather it, and put it on my petticoat. It's 5 o'clock now, so we're officially cutting into getting ready time.
I learned this technique on the internet recently and it's kind of game changing. It's basically that tulle doesn't really like being backstitched, and it's a cleaner and more efficient method to just turn your stitch length down to the smallest stitch length, do a few stitches like on a 0 or on a 1, and then increase your stitch length for your regular stitching. And basically it just reduces that kind of ugly gathering that you might get if you backstitch, and believe me, it actually is beautiful. It holds really well and it looks so much cleaner. After gathering my tulle, I just sewed it into a loop and attached it to my petticoat, just making sure that I was attaching it in a straight line so that I wouldn't have too much skewing on the bottom of the hem of the petticoat. I then gathered my petticoat and got ready to attach it to the rest of my skirt.
Alright, putting the skirt in. Wowee. Final step. Cool. You guys can know this too, because I just had to remind myself that the right side faces inwards to, I guess, what is the wrong side of the skirt, because we want the right side facing out. But that kind of sounds confusing in my brain when I say it, but the right side of the petticoat faces the inwards of the skirt. I'm going to finish attaching my petticoat. I'm going to sew it in and overlock that raw edge, and then I'm going to get ready and head out for the night. That's all for the video today, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you a lot. If you make a dress like this, be sure to tag me. I would love to see your creations, and I've got a different question for you this week. Usually I ask what you're working on at the moment, but today I wanted to ask you what your proudest make ever is. Tell me your favorite thing you've ever made in your life. I will read all of your comments and reply. I appreciate you. Thank you for being here. I will see you in the next video. Bye.